Regrettably, I'm about to cause trouble. Written and narrated by Amie McNee. Chapter 30. I went to try and find Zita. She wasn't in any of the major courtyards, despite the lovely, surprisingly warm weather, and she wasn't in the gallery. I found William Summers in the clock tower court juggling. He was a picture of the court fool. "Summers!" I called. "Do not interrupt me, witch. I have never been able to go for this long." "That's what she said," yelled a witty soul from the crowd. "It is my job to crack the bawdy jokes, sir." "Have you seen Zita?" I asked again, trying to make eye contact between the flying, multicoloured balls. "She is reading the Duke of Norfolk's stars. She's only just left." I sighed. "And Rufus?" "Haven't seen your desired all day." I didn't even bother fighting him. I left to return to my room. Maybe I could sneak back into Anne's chambers, but that would confirm that I was under her spell. I sat myself down in front of the fire, which was still crackling loudly, like someone had recently attended to it. I was under her spell. A warm sunbeam came through the window and lay across my face. It felt heavenly. I did need the day off. It had been the biggest week of my life. I lay down in the beam of light, the fire warming my left side, the sun warming my right. "Maude?" I startled. Rufus's head had appeared outside the curtains of my bed. "Why aren't you working, Ruf?" I asked from the flat of my back. "The king gave me a day off," he explained. "The king gave me a day off too," I said suspiciously. He looked nonplussed and swung his legs over the edge of the bed. "Forgive me for borrowing your bed. Do you want to rest?" "I want to be in the sun," I said, moving my face so it followed the sunbeam. "Shall we go for a walk?" We rugged up and went outside. Hampton Court is in the middle of nowhere. Though it doesn't take long to get the boat down to the middle of London, there are only forests and farmland around the huge red brick monstrosity. Thankfully, Rufus knew the area well. There was the Hare Warren, Middle Park and Bushy Park, the king's deer hunting forests. But we needn't worry about that. The king was inside today. It was just us. "Where are we going?" We were walking along the path alongside the Thames. "Did you grow up on this land?" He shook his head. No, Maude." He actually laughed. "I had only spent a few years here. It's brand new." "Oh, I'm sorry," I said indignantly. "I don't keep up to date with the king's castles." "I grew up in Greenwich, mostly," he explained. "Down here." He indicated a well-worn path into the forest. I pulled my cape closer around me and followed. I had spent a lot of time with Rufus in the apothecary. We had been alone a lot. But this time felt a little different. I didn't know what to say. My mouth was dry. Rufus wasn't saying anything, and I wasn't saying anything. Perhaps it was all the hinting and suggestions made by the motley lot. They had pulled unspoken thoughts from the safety of our minds and made things awkward. Or perhaps it was the situation I had got him in with the king, and now the queen. I had put our futures at stake. "These woods are beautiful," I managed. He nodded. They were beautiful. It was filled with pines, all still thick with their needles, and some still frosted with old snow from a few days before. It was enchanting and festive. I saw a few more courtiers enjoying the walk deeper into the forest. They were holding hands. Was this some sort of lover's forest? Had he brought me here to seduce me? "You're very comfortable with silence," I said. He didn't reply. "Stop it, Rufus," I moaned, and he started chuckling. "It makes me feel uncomfortable walking in the quiet." "What do you want to talk about then?" he asked, smiling. I thought about it. There was actually a lot to discuss, but I was tired of all the courtly intrigues. "I'm sorry for making you broom the apothecary when you really hated brooming," I said finally. Again, he took a few moments to reply. "I forgive you." "Did I remind you of your mother?" "You are as demanding as my mother, but you are nowhere near as scary." "I'm scary," I protested. "You have not met my mother." "I'm scary," I repeated defensively. "Do you think you will ever see her again? Maybe you can ask the king or someone in court where she's gone." He nodded. "I could." "What is her name?" "Her Spanish name is Catalina." "Why did His Majesty give you the day off?" I asked as we broke out into a clearing. The sun shone fully on my face again. Rufus glanced down at me quickly, grinning. "He likes us as a couple." My tummy flipped. "Zita and Hildy do too." I was surprised I could get my lips to say such a thing. And the fools. And good Thatcher, I added. He was chuckling. I loved the way he laughed. Matchmaking is for the simple-minded, I declared, wondering what he would say to that. Matchmaking to married people is for the damned. We laughed, but I felt a little disappointed. I kicked a fallen pine cone. Do you like playing your trumpet again? Very much. I wish I could hear you play without the noise of court or the racket of the other musicians. Damn those other players, interrupting my music. Again, we laughed. Maybe you can play for me alone one day. I would love to, Maude. I reached out my hand and let them brush past the pine leaves. They tickled my palms. These woods remind me of you, Maude, he said after a while. I cringed. I had tried hard not to think about that day, what he had seen as I tore through the woods, grieving, taken by madness, stripping myself of clothes, yelling. This pine is like a tent. My voice was high-pitched. I led him under the alcove of a Christmas tree's curtain. He was frowning at me. I circled the tree, resting my palm on her bark as I went, and he watched me go around and around. Is it because of Watlington Wood? I asked, reluctantly. Aye, he said, to my dismay. He must have read the sadness on my face because he shook his head and stopped me in my circling. The pine was letting in tiny flickers of sun, little needles of light dancing off our skin. When I found you in between the trees, he paused, looking around, as though the words he wanted were hidden in the canopy of the tree. I had never seen anyone, look the way you did. I was mad, I whispered. He shook his head, and again he looked to the skies. You were undone. It was like watching a caged animal free itself. It was like witnessing a lion from my homelands escaping from her cage, and I witnessed you as everything you were meant to be. And I feared you, and I couldn't look away because it was just power ricocheting off the trees, a bright light, burning off old bindings. I knew what he had said was true because my body erupted in shivers and tears flooded my eyes, and I felt the power he spoke of ripple down my spine and pour out of my skin. I had never felt so seen. I thought I had lost everything, I said. My voice was clear. I thought I was being stripped of everything that made me. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, inexplicable trembling in my fingers. But I had just been deprived of my masks. I had been left only with myself. He took hold of my forearm, his thumb rubbing against my skin. He was so much taller than me. That is what I saw. His eyes were intense, his brow furrowed with a desperate sort of look, of pain almost. What are we doing here, Rufus? I asked. I was hoping we might kiss. The words, like a rope, tied themselves around us and brought us close to one another. Our bodies were pressed against one another, my back up against the trunk. I could feel him against me. Were we going to do it? There, under the pine leaves? The witches think we are going to become lovers. He spoke seriously. I hate to prove them right, I whispered. He raised an eyebrow. Please don't let your stubbornness ruin this moment. He put his hand on my chin and tilted my head towards him. Let's just not tell them, I breathed. Agreed. He kissed me softly, starting with the edges of my lips, moving towards the center, and then tugging at my bottom lip with his teeth. I let out an involuntary gasp. He withdrew to check on me. You must keep going, I instructed. You must sweep the floors, Rufus. You must keep kissing me, Rufus, he whispered, moving to my ears now, always telling me what to do. I think you like doing as I say, I managed. Verily, I do. His breath on my ear did something ungodly. But I'm going to take over now, yes? I managed a nod. Rufus was adept. The way he moved my skirts and maneuvered my corset was like a dance, a very practiced dance. Fairies are experienced lovers? I asked breathlessly, now standing in only my shift. I'm a fairy who grew up in court, Maude, he said, kissing my collarbones. What do you expect from me? I smiled. His expertise was thrilling. I thought perhaps he'd hesitate to take off my shift. He knew what lay beneath this dress. Maybe he'd like to turn me around and take me from behind. I knew people did that. But instead, he draped his cloak around my nakedness and then dropped to his knees, his hands tracing my mark, in awe, not unlike my bewitched husband had done back in the brothel. But I had not bewitched Rufus. He was doing this of his own accord. Then he began to use his tongue, and my husband had not done that.